So this SWAT team received a random tip that drug dealers were living inside this house. A neighbor had apparently seen a lot of suspicious black people always coming and going. But when this guy soon learned who actually lived here, hopefully he felt bad. You see, since this was a rich, mostly white neighborhood in North Carolina, a bunch of loud black people moving in next door quickly caught this guy's eye. He began to notice that several Ubers were stopping at their house every day, always dropping off some sketchy strangers. And since this guy even started seeing these strangers smoking weed every once in a while, he just reported his neighbors for being drug dealers. But despite zero evidence, $1 million investigation was soon launched with helicopters and an entire SWAT team. Thankfully, no one was home. But when these officers disabled the security cameras and looked everywhere, all they found was a recording studio. As it turns out, this home actually belonged to the legendary rapper J. Cole. He had just been using it as a safe creative haven for small local artists. As his friend put it, J. Cole was the last person to do anything bad. He was out here helping people. But neither the cops nor the neighbor ever apologized. So J. Cole just created an iconic song about the story called Neighbors, which actually went on to help his new album go platinum.
Here we come. Keep 'em up, cause you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till you see what we can do. Cause ain't nobody gon' give it to you like this, like this, like this.
YouTube Shorts is set to be colonized by TikTok and, to a lesser degree, Instagram on the 25th of March. This seems to stem from the idea that the dead internet theory is alive and well within the YouTube Shorts comment sections, as there's been a trend to record and post the type of interactions one might find organically in this area. From bots to spam to people just repeating the joke they saw in a short, it's quite often that the type of stuff one might see in the comment sections is less than original. As such, it could be argued that this trend started with the idea that Shorts comments are absolutely cooked, which has remained a meme for a good while, and that once again its inhabitants need to leave and find themselves another platform to live on. The idea of colonizing YouTube Shorts became appealing. It's become known as a battle of brain rot, as the teams are aware of the ridiculousness of it all and call themselves unemployed. It's pretty interesting how when TikTok was first beginning to blow up, YouTube users at the time would consistently describe it as cringe and terrible, full of dead memes and rehashed content. The world seemed to associate the rising platform with the most awful posts available, and then as it became more mainstream, it absolutely kept its stereotype as cringe, but also became the producer of many memes. Then, as YouTube Shorts was created solely to replicate the success of TikTok, many on TikTok decided that Shorts content was worse because it tends to be slow with keeping up with current trends, as TikTok came full circle and became more popular and thus more current. This is why the idea of colonization seems to resonate with so many people. It has seemed to have given TikTok users this idea of superior identity, as it references the very real-world application of force to establish control over foreign territories. They understand the tongue-in-cheek reference to this practice, and by creating this identity,
Yeah, no. No, just forget about it.
I'm leaving.
See you, man.
Those filthy blues.
How am I already underwater?
I'm in the same boat.
I'm in an actual boat, because I've been using Grammarly's AI for years to keep...
Who killed him? What? Who killed him? I don't know what you're talking about. Red 43. Who killed him? I won't say a word to you. We'll see about that. Who was it? It was Blue 17. He's in Florida. Speak! Ah, shit! He's dead! It's at floor 7. I'll take you there.
Now we're talking.
get him?
Hell yeah, I did.
That's red out there, man.
You know.
I have been shouting since 2023.
The protagonist of the movie is an obese, old-fashioned, and carefree man named Dusty. All he cares about is eating and watching vintage movies. With the advancements in technology, the world has moved on, but Dusty is still stuck in the 80s. He doesn't like using smartphones, thinks texting is a waste of time, and even believes that emojis are strange. Come on, Dusty, even the grapefruit? The one thing he fears is millennials. He can't stand teenagers who have contrasting opinions to his. At the start of the movie, Dusty is in the car, munching on a burger and listening to some 80s rock. Despite being 50 years old, he is carefree and doesn't have a full-time job. This habit has caused Dusty to lose all his friends, but he could care less about it. Soon, a bunch of millennials catch him in the act and take videos of him. Dusty is obviously uncomfortable, but due to his super awkward nature, he can't say a word to them. After a while, his niece Chloe joins him in his car, and the two proceed to a movie theater. It turns out that they have been watching movies together since Chloe was young, and this tradition is being continued today. The two appear to be close, but with the contrasting differences in age and habits, it's clear that Chloe is a bit weirded out by her uncle. This becomes even more evident when Dusty plays an old song, which she calls boring. Get out of the car, Chloe. On reaching a theater called Cinethrax, the uncle-niece duo starts debating on what movie to watch. Dusty wants to go with a vintage 80s movie, which he has already seen 10 times, but Chloe wants to watch a Cinethrax exclusive 3D movie called Chosen, and eventually the stubborn niece gets her way. They then head to the ticket line, where a lot of millennials are clicking selfies and texting. As expected, Uncle Dusty is disgusted by the sight. And to make matters worse, he doesn't even have the money to purchase the movie tickets because they are that expensive. This is part of modern living that Uncle Dusty can't run away from. Hence, Chloe reluctantly coughs up some cash. Strangely, all the Cinethrax employees, including the ticket seller and the bouncers, have a weird and gloomy look on their faces. Sounds normal to me. Before entering the main theater, Uncle Dusty checks his 3D glasses into the bin and brings out his own bulky glasses, which he calls shifters. Apparently, he hates 3D movies so much that he has brought these shifters to flatline them into normal 2D movies. He has even brought a pair for his niece Chloe, but as expected, the latter doesn't want to wear them. After this, Dusty heads to the canteen to buy some popcorn. There, some millennials gang up on him and inquire if he has accidentally ended up in the 3D section. Dusty simply says that he is a movie freak and leaves. Weird flex, but okay. When he enters the main theater, he finds the manager of Cinethrax, a good-looking guy named Zach, flirting with Chloe. However, as soon as Dusty approaches them, Zach makes an excuse and leaves. However, at the same time, two of Chloe's friends arrive and sit next to her. It turns out this was her plan all along. The movie time with her uncle was just an excuse to get out of the house. Dusty is annoyed that Chloe's not spending time with him, and also because her friends have taken his seat. He tries convincing her to sit with him, but Chloe doesn't want to. She has started seeing her uncle as a boring person who will embarrass her in front of her friends every chance he gets. Hearing this, Dusty becomes sad, but still, he decides to sit right behind Chloe's seat. Soon, Zach gets on stage and announces that the movie is about to begin. He lays out the rules that no one is allowed to use their phones, and that everyone has to put their Cinethrax 3D glasses on. The millennials are pumped up with the announcement, and they start cheering in excitement. Then, the movie Chosen finally begins. It is a love story with some pretty weird acting and storylines, but nonetheless, because of the ultra-realistic 3D action, the millennials are loving it. They scream and cheer at literally every bit of dialogue. However, Uncle Dusty, who is not wearing any glasses, is left disappointed with the movie. He can't wait to go home already. Shortly after, he remembers his shifter glasses and decides to put them on. However, because they flatline the 3D into a boring 2D version, Dusty is still not intrigued. So, he decides to annoy the other people around. He sees one of Chloe's friends texting and reminds her that using the phone is not allowed in the theater. In fact, he causes a minor ruckus, which doesn't sit well with the other millennials there. At last, when Dusty still refuses to back down, Chloe tells her friend to stop using the phone so that they can watch the movie in peace. Dusty believes that he has won, completely oblivious that he's embarrassing his niece in front of her cool friends. As the movie goes on, Dusty gets more and more bored. In one scene, he notices something very unusual, as if the screen is faulty. However, when he takes off his shifter glasses, there is nothing. Confused, Dusty wants to try on the Cinethrax glasses to see what the real movie experience is like. He asks Chloe to lend her his glasses for a while, but by this time, she is fed up with her uncle's childish antics. She bluntly berates him for embarrassing her in front of her friends and requests him to act normally. Left with no options, Uncle Dusty puts on his shifter glasses and continues watching the movie. Suddenly, he notices a giant worm-like creature peering through the screen. All the millennials in the theater are completely oblivious to the worm's presence, but Dusty can see it clearly. Terrified, he quickly takes off his glasses, and with this, the worm disappears. A few minutes pass by, but the worm is nowhere to be seen. So, Dusty suspects that it has something to do with his 2D glasses. Hence, he puts them back on, and as soon as he does, the giant worm attacks him with its suckers. Dusty screams in horror and causes chaos inside the theater. He also drops his popcorn all over Chloe and her friends. Enraged, the millennials start calling him names, but Dusty is sure that there is something unusual going on inside the theater. He tries explaining it to Chloe, but as expected, she is having none of it. Instead, she is embarrassed and expresses her regrets about him being there. The commotion soon attracts the Cinethrax manager Zach, who approaches Dusty and takes him away, much to the delight of the other millennials.
Get that boomer out of here. Yeah, old people suck.
Worried that her uncle has gotten himself into trouble, Chloe also also follows. Outside, Dusty tries to explain that something came out of the screen and approached him, but Zack concludes that the old man is simply mistaking the ultra-realistic 3D action for a real thing. However, Dusty is sure that he saw a worm-like creature. At last, he decides to get a refund and leave the place, but to his surprise, Chloe doesn't want to go. Instead, she chastises her uncle for embarrassing her several times, just so that he can become the center of attraction. Saying this, she leaves him and goes back. Back inside the theater, Dusty tries going after her, but Zack stops him, saying he's not allowed to go in there anymore. Left with no choice, a devastated Uncle Dusty decides to wait for Chloe till the movie ends. But since he cannot wait in the main hall, Zack takes him to the projection room. There, Zack and his employees start talking about how Cinethrax will take over the world because of its super realistic cinematics and visuals. The age of old 2D movies is gone, and now 3D has taken over. James Cameron, is that you? They also ask Dusty to give it a try, and if he still doesn't like it, they will refund his money. Zack then hands Dusty a pair of Cinethrax glasses, but after a long thought, the latter rejects it. Because of this, the Cinethrax employees become enraged and suddenly turn into possessed, zombie-like beings. They then attack Dusty and almost succeed in driving him into a sharp object, but somehow the uncle manages to escape from their clutches. How did he do it? He simply took a rotten burger out of his pocket and shoved it into the possessed zombies. Dusty then runs to the main hall and tries finding a way out of the building. However, it is impossible, as all the Cinethrax employees have turned into zombies and are on the lookout for him. So, Dusty sneaks inside the storeroom and braces himself to do the one thing which he hates the most: texting. He sends several messages to Chloe, where he apologizes for being a jerk and also admits that he is scared of losing her. Then he proceeds to warn her of the impending danger, but before he can do so, Zach and the others break in through the door and take him away. Meanwhile, Chloe has started feeling bad for scolding her uncle earlier. She waits for his next message, but it doesn't come. Hence, when she finds his shifter glasses lying on the floor, she picks them up and tries them on. Lo and behold, she notices a giant tentacled creature, which has now taken over the entire screen. The creature is also sucking the life out of all the other millennials, meaning that Chloe is the only uninfected human left in the theater. Terrified, she takes off her glasses and tries running, but all the infected millennials start following her. A major struggle ensues, and it appears as if all hope is lost. But fortunately, with the help of a prop sword, Chloe manages to swat the hundreds of infected millennials before entering the projection room. There, she notices her uncle bound and tied to a chair, and finally realizes that he was telling the truth. Either that, or he's into some kinky stuff. However, before she could help him, Zach and the others arrive and apprehend her. Following this, Zach reveals the main creature behind all this mayhem. It turns out to be an alien, which has traveled from another galaxy to extend its species. Zach mentions that being infected was the best thing to ever happen to him, as now he doesn't feel any pain or anxiety. He also encourages the uncle-niece duo to embrace the change, as the alien only wants to help them overcome their miserable and boring lives. Saying this, he forcefully puts on a pair of Cinethrax 3D glasses to Dusty and makes him watch the movie. This will apparently turn him into one of them. But fortunately, Chloe intervenes in the nick of time and stabs the alien with a broken piece of glass. This momentarily stuns the infected zombies, allowing Chloe to untie her uncle from his bondage. Unfortunately, because they are about to escape, Zach releases a tentacle from his mouth, which grabs Chloe and starts possessing her. And in no time, her face starts turning, implying that the alien has entered her body. Just then, Uncle Dusty grabs an axe and chops off Zach's head like an 80s hero, but by this time, the damage has already been done. Soon, the two reach the exit door, and when Dusty opens it, he sees that the city outside has been ravaged by a colossal alien. Here, he finally realizes that the world has been taken over by aliens. At the same time, Chloe also changes her demeanor. She tells her uncle to embrace the change and accept the fact that there is no escaping. She then mentions that Zach was right. There is no pain or anxiety in this life. Soon, the other millennials and Cinethrax employees also arrive and start persuading him to accept the change. They even sing a song to help Dusty change his mind.
I'll take you to the candy shop.
At last, realizing that there is no hope, Dusty finally gives in and starts singing along to the song.
I'll let you lick the lollipop.
In the last scene, all the people get back inside the theater, where the same movie is being played. Chloe, who is now completely possessed, gives her uncle a pair of the Cinethrax glasses so that he can embrace the change and become one of them. The movie ends as Dusty anxiously waits for the alien to arrive and possess him.
Keep going till you hit the spot. Oh!
DaVinci Fusion. Papa, why are you just going when I need you? Oh. If the party was over and I needed some fun, you'd be talking to God of Uncle. The party was over and I wanna have some fun.
Comfortable in the comfortable in this interface and have a general idea of what all these little boxes mean, but bomb. So let's take a look at breaking down how this stuff actually works. I'm in the edit page right now just so we can play things back, but let's take a look at the comp in the Fusion page and learn a bit more about kind of how things are laid out. If I want to open a shot from my timeline into the Fusion page, all I have to do is be over it with my playhead, and then down toward the lower part of the screen, just click on Fusion. And that's going to open up the
If the world was skibidi, I'd wanna be next. If the world was ending, I'd wanna be the next.
aka Spider-Man, aka the Spider Menace. But rest assured, dear viewers, we here
done load.
aka Spider-Man, aka the Spider Menace. But rest assured, dear viewers, we here at the Daily Bugle will not rest until we've uncovered the behind web of lies.
This shot in the Fusion page. Now, if you hit this page and it looks really intimidating, don't worry, because that's exactly why we're doing this training. It's my goal to make sure that not only do you feel comfortable in this interface and have a general idea of what all these little boxes mean, but actually have some practical wisdom to be able to create your own composites. So let's dive into the interface here. In the upper part of the screen, you'll see two viewers, the left viewer and the right viewer. Now, these look kind of like the viewers here in the edit page, because there's two viewers right next to each other, right? But in the edit page, the viewer on the right is always what you're going to see in your final project. And the viewer on the left, you can kind of pick different things from your media pool, open up different source clips and everything, and kind of look at the parts of your project. In Fusion, this right viewer isn't always what people are going to see with your project. These actually both act a lot more like the source viewer. You can pick different parts of your composite and view them either on the left viewer or the right viewer. Right now, this happens to be what we are going to see when we render the movie, but that's because I have this selected. More on that in a little bit. But for now, if you just know that you can pick different parts of your composite and preview them in the left or right-hand viewers, either one, and you can kind of choose which parts of your composite to look at. Over here on the right-hand side of our interface, we have the inspector. If the inspector is not here, make sure to go and click on this inspector button right here to open and close that panel. But this works just like the inspector in the other pages. Anything that you have selected, you can adjust the properties here in the inspector. So if I want to adjust my color correction, all of that happens here in the inspector. So let's get into some more of the nitty-gritty, Down here, we have the nodes. The nodes are the building blocks for absolutely everything that happens in Fusion. So we're going to spend a ton of time learning what these do, learning what they are, when to use a certain node and when not to use a certain node, how they're connected and what they all mean. Because this is something that can be really intimidating, especially when you've never worked with anything that's kind of like nodes before. Generally, when you have a composite like this, if you've ever worked with an image editing program that has layers, you think about building each element kind of on top of one another in layers. We might have our original footage in a layer, and then on top of that, we would have our parking lot layer, right? But the thing that kind of throws people off is there aren't really layers inside of Fusion. You think about like in the edit page, if we want to put an image on top of something else, we just drag it up here on the second layer, right? And that's kind of how things work. And this makes a lot of sense because, that's how, software has worked for a long time. And then if we want to adjust anything about the layer, we can select the layer, go to the inspector, and, mess with it. And if you've done any playing around with, again, any kind of image editing program or even just stuff here in the edit page, that would make a lot of sense to you. Here's the good news. Even though we don't have specific layers inside of the Fusion page, the way that we create composites actually works exactly the same. We're still basically putting things over other things and adjusting their properties. The only difference is that we don't have an interface that looks like this, where we have one layer physically on top of another layer in some kind of timeline. So if you're wishing that we had layers and that things were just a lot more simple, you're actually in a good place here because you probably have some kind of concept of how compositing works. So if we're going to put these two things together, we're not going to build them with layers, we're going to build them with nodes. And like I said, we're going to spend a ton of time getting used to these. But from a 10,000 foot view, nodes are just a flowchart of what you want the program to do. It's like a set of instructions, like a blueprint. So instead of building the layers yourself, you're pretty much telling Fusion how to put images together. If this isn't quite clear yet, we're going to dive in right now. To make things even less intimidating, we're going to start with an analog example. This is a node, and a node is very simple. All it is telling Fusion or whatever app you're using to do something. One thing. You can think of this as just like one step in a process. An example could be open a photo, could be add some text, could be change the colors of something, but it's just one step in the process. And a composite in Fusion is just linking up multiple nodes to do something else. So we're going to start by doing something and then connect it to this other one, and we're going to do another thing. This is really all that nodes are. And building things in Fusion is just about linking these single tasks up in a certain way. So let's practice this with something a little bit more fun, namely toast. If we were going to make some toast, to do that, we would follow a couple different steps. And you can think of it just like a how-to. The first thing you do is get a piece of bread. Then we toast it in the toaster. Then we give it to somebody to eat, namely me. If every node just does something, then how do we make toast with nodes? First node, get bread. Definitely have to do that. What's the next node? Toast it. Then put it on the dinner plate. Let's get these babies linked up. So we can follow these nodes just like a recipe, right? Get the bread, okay? We got it. And in this node, we toast it. And then we put it on the dinner plate. So even though this seems really simple, this is actually all that nodes are. It's just linking up the different steps to do what you want. And the end result is hopefully tasty. So let's take a look at this concept more practically inside of Fusion. Here we have our haunted house shot, and I have my playhead over it here in the edit page. Then I'll just click on Fusion. And that'll bring this clip up here in the edit page. Then I'll just click on Fusion. And that'll bring this clip up inside of the Fusion page. And here we have our recipe, our instructions. And just like we've talked about with the toast, we have media in and media out. All this is doing is taking this clip from the timeline, doing nothing, and then putting it back in the timeline. So if we were to go back to our edit page, we'll see we have a Fusion comp here, but there's nothing going on. It looks exactly the same because we haven't done anything. So this is our grab a slice of bread. This is put it on the dinner plate. Now let's actually do something with this. Again, all of the stuff that we're going to do happens in between our media in and media out because we have to grab our piece of bread, then toast it, and then put it on the plate. Now let's toast the bread, aka let's do something. Some of the more common somethings that we can do are up here in this toolbar. These are just nodes that we can create by grabbing them and dragging them into our graph here. So this little teardrop is a blur node. I can just grab that and drag that in. And this is an instruction telling Fusion to do one thing, and that is blur whatever image is connected to this node. So what we have to do is actually connect an image to it. So we can take this media in and we can disconnect it from media out. The way we can do that is just click on this connector here where it turns blue and it will disconnect. Then we can grab the output, which is this little gray square, and drag it onto our blur and let go. That'll connect it to the yellow input. All this is just whatever image is attached to this little connector, that's what's going to get blurred. Then we take the output of the blur and do the same thing with media out. Let it go. And now whatever image this blur makes, we connect it to this input, and that's what is going to be sent back into our timeline. This is the same thing as grab the bread, toast it, and put it on the plate. So let's take a look at, see, this is a little bit blurry, but the reason why it's not really blurry is because we have to adjust the properties of the blur.
You're looking to make your app the best it can be. It sounds simple, but the reality is...
So, just like everything else in Resolve, if you select something, you can adjust the properties here in the inspector. So if I select our blur node and go up to the inspector, we have the properties here for how much to blur it, what it's supposed to look like. Inspector, we have properties here in the inspector. So if I select our blur node and go up to the inspector, we have the properties here for how much to blur it, what it's supposed to look like, and all of that stuff. Now we can boost up this blur size, and we're getting a blurry result. This right here is the basics of nodes. If you can get your head around this, you're gonna be okay. All we're doing is grabbing an image, blurring it, and then putting it back into the timeline. Because anything that's attached to media out is going to be sent back into our edit. So if we go to the edit page, now we have this blurry image. This is a really basic effect inside of Fusion. Something to note, you have to have stuff connected to media out or it won't work. If I disconnect this, we'll see we don't have an image here. And if we went to the edit page, we don't have an image getting rendered to the timeline. The only way this will show up in the timeline is if we have something connected to media out. So going back to our toast example here, getting bread is really like media in, and the dinner plate is really like media out. Because remember, media in is just grab something from the timeline. Pretend the plate is the timeline. We grab the piece of media from the timeline. In the middle, we do something with it. So this could be color correction, this could be blur, this could be an effect of any kind, but it gets toasted here in the middle, and then our instructions say to put it back into the timeline. So the end result of this comp is toast. Of course, for this example, we have the multiple plates, but it's really more like this. It's get the piece of media from the timeline, toast it, and then put it back on the timeline. So now we have a basic effect going on, but let's say we want to put something over this blurry image. This would normally be something where you would put a layer above this. Let's say you want to put text over this blurry image. You would put a text layer over it, right? Well, in Fusion, again, because we don't have layers, what we're going to have to do is build an instruction, just like we have this node giving an instruction to blur the image. We got to have a node that tells Fusion to put something over something else. And that node is called a merge node. So now let's talk about a really important part of compositing in Fusion, and that is a merge node. A merge node is a node that does one thing, and the one thing it does is put something over something else. This is where I feel like a lot of people get hung up because it is a little bit confusing because we have several different parts to this, but the basics of it are really, really simple. So in our toast example, we have media in. We're grabbing our piece of bread. Then we're toasting it, and then we're rendering it out to the timeline. Let's say we want to put some delicious jelly on top. You can think of a merge node as a butter knife. This butter knife, at least in this example, has one job: to get something and put it on top of our toast. It's our merge node. So let's make some room here. I'll move this over. The first thing we do is put the merge node in a certain place. The place we put it is dependent on when we want something to go over something else, right? So we've taken our bread off the plate, and here is where we toast it. And now this is where we want to put our jelly on top. So how do we get the jelly? Well, this media in node, remember this grabs our bread, right? This grabs something off of the timeline. We can use this same type of node to just load in anything into Fusion, basically. In Fusion, this could be a picture, this could be a graphic element, it could be footage. It's just anything that you want to bring in and do something with is a media in node. When you open up a clip from the timeline, it automatically makes one and brings in that clip. But this is just one kind of node. So if we make a media in node to get some jelly, then here's what we got. Grape jelly. That's how we bring this into this whole compositing world. And now that we have the jelly, we can do something with it. Just like the rest of our nodes, if we wanted to just render the jelly, we could certainly just hook up our media out node. And if we view our media out on this monitor, we can see we're just rendering jelly. Because all we've done is bring in some jelly and then render it to the timeline. And all of this stuff, because it's not connected to media out, won't render. We won't see any of it, just whatever's connected to media out. But let's link this back up how it was. Right now, we're actually just rendering this piece of toast because this jelly is in the node graph, but it's not connected to anything. Remember, we need to connect it to stuff for it to work. If we want to put the jelly on top of this toast, then we have to connect this to the merge node because the merge node, remember, is like the knife. It goes and gets something and then it puts it on top of something else. So let's hook this up like we're supposed to. Let's grab this jelly and we're going to connect this to the green input of our merge node. So a merge node has two different inputs. The normal one that just selects by default is the yellow input. That's just So let's hook this up like we're supposed to. Let's grab this jelly and we're going to connect this to the green input of our merge node. So a merge node has two different inputs. The normal one that just selects by default is the yellow input. That's just the input on all of the nodes. So when we connect our toast, it's here in the yellow input, which is our background by default. When we connect this media in, the jelly, to our merge, what we're telling it to do is put jelly on top of our toast. Jelly, something like that. And because this is connected to the media out, this is exactly what would be rendered. So anytime that you want to put something on top of something else, you have to use a merge node because remember, a node has one job. This guy's job is to say, hey, put something on top of something else. But the other thing that's cool with the merge node is the merge node controls not only what goes on top of something else, but how it is treated. Like I said, if our merge node is like our knife tells our jelly exactly how to act on top of our toast, right? Whether it's spread out, nice and thin, or stacked on thick, the knife controls how it works. So if you want two things to interact in a certain way, chances are you're going to be worrying about your merge node. Easiest way to get to a merge node is right here in the toolbar, right next to blur, merge. You can grab this and drag that into our comp. Now, again, this merge node, this is where stuff gets a little bit more hairy because we don't just have this yellow input, we actually have a green input too. And we have these blue inputs, which we'll talk about in a minute. But a merge node, remember, has one job, and its job is to put something over something else. So we have to tell this merge node what we want on the bottom in the background and what we want on top in the foreground. So just like we connect things to a blur, we can connect things to this merge node and have it put things over other things. So let's start with our background. I'm going to move this blur over a little bit and disconnect our connection here between our blur and our media out. Let's put the merge right here in between, and I'll connect my blur into my merge and my merge into my media out. What this is
AI detector, I can find it. Like, 1 second. Papa, this is only Ghibli I found. This. I thought it was Ghibli. God, this is like real anime. Papa, they're gonna bankrupt artists. Look, this was not made by a human. This was AI. Look, this artists are khatam now. Look, सब कुछ खत्म
This is going to do is make basically the same thing. And this is the nice thing with nodes. You can actually go through and just think about what they might be doing. So we're grabbing some media with media in, we're blurring it, and then we're merging, well, apparently nothing over this blur, and then we're rendering it out. And it looks just like you would expect, a blurry image with nothing else over it. So now let's pick something to put over this blurry image. Easy thing to pick would be text. Over here in the left side of our toolbar, we have this T. You can grab this T and drag it into the graph. And let's put this like right here, right above our merge node. This node has one job. It creates text. What text it creates and what it looks like and everything is determined by our settings here in the inspector. So let's say we just want to write some text, and we can change the font.
Papa, look. This is all I learned in around 20 minutes. Not much, but still. He's explaining slow and steady, which I like. Look. For example, I have this image. क्या है ये? पापा मुझे नहीं पता बस है. एक सेकंड. हटा देंगे एक दिन. So suppose I want to add a blur to this image. Yes, so I'll add this. Second just hold shift and place it here. But let's say I want to add some text also. अरे हाँ. So I have some text. Now I can't just directly place this inside. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll make a merge. Okay, I'll make a merge and I'll connect this right between. Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna connect this text to the merge. I'm gonna make the text say something. Look. एक second. Right now the blur you can increase it like this. Look. So look. You can make it. No, this will happen for the entire clip. Let's say if I just want this part of the clip, so I'll just cut this and I'll just put it on that. Yeah.
And everything if we want to, but I'll just leave it for now. And now nothing's happening. Yay! That's because we haven't connected this text into our comp at all. It's just kind of hanging out by itself. And anytime that you have a node hanging out by itself, it's not really doing anything. So again, we got to take the output of this node, but this time we're going to connect it into the foreground of our merge. That's this green input, just like this. And now we got something going on here in our viewer. We have our text over our blurry background. This is just about the simplest form of a composite that you could make. We're putting text over our image after we blur that first image, right? And then we're rendering all of that to the timeline. Let's switch over to the edit page and make sure it's coming through. It sure is. The merge node is like the very first step that kind of starts to get overwhelming, I've found. Because one, there's another input. There's a lot of settings to mess with here in the inspector. And it also seems kind of confusing why you would use a certain node for a certain thing. I promise you in a couple minutes, we're going to get into what each node is, what type of node it is, and kind of when to hook it up a certain way. Before we jump into all the other kinds
Hi, I'm Dana. I'm a filmmaker. Come with me to create an entire movie poster mockup with the newest AI-powered features from Envato. I use ImageGen to describe my poster, but there's a few things I didn't like, so I changed them with the replace tool.
So in this video, I'm going to show you how to Fusion page. In order at the same time, you will see that you get the preview. Right now, you will see there is no text because we did not add anything. All right, so here we have our text, and the font that I'm using is this one right here. And if you go over to the transform, you can drag this y-axis in the from the right now. You will see that there is no depth over here, but the text is in a 3D space. So in order to add depth, all you need to do is go back to the text over here and scroll down, and you will see this tab over here. Click on it and go over to the depth section and just increase this. So you can see we have the depth.
Oh, look at his cinematic piece of art. Safsa. Look at this cinematic piece of art that everybody loves. Nobody hates this majestic piece of art. And this Let's look at this. Wait for the snack. Wait, I have an idea. Let's not make this longer. Okay, I'm gonna make this instead of using the normal text. See, a text 3D one connects to a 3D renderer. Okay. Okay, so we have this 3D renderer who's connecting it, okay, to media, and I'm gonna connect this to this. Now I'm gonna write this. Wait, one second. Okay, so here we want to add 3D text. So first we're gonna add a 3D renderer, which renders 3D. So we're gonna add connect the text. Wait a second. I think I'm gonna add a middleman. So I'm gonna connect this.
शिप्रा ने कुछ बताया मतलब नहीं उसने जब तुमने इनवॉइस भेजा तो उसने कुछ यस नो बोला कि पेमेंट करवा दे हेलो ऐसी देख लिए
Kinds of nodes, I want to show you another basic.
These are called nodes. You see these little boxes? They're called nodes, okay? Now you can yes. So this is media in, which is basically what comes in, and this is media out, what comes out. Just think of it like a toast. Media in is the bread, and what comes out is a toast, and this space in between is whatever that happens in between. The process. Yes. So let's see how to add a change to this video. This is the video as you see. Okay. So I'm gonna add this blur, but right now it's doing nothing. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll connect it and I'll put it between. Okay. So 1 second. Now this is, let's say I'm toasting red. Now look, if I increase this throttle, it increases. Now let's see, I'm giving it like this. Now let's see if I want to add a text. Now, if अरे क्या हुआ? Let's just say if I want to add a text, if I try to add anything, I don't do it because it's not connected to any of this. It's just sitting there. So what I'll do is I'll get something called a merge. Okay, and I'll connect it to this media out. Okay.
When you say merge, it sounds like merch.
M-E-R-G. Yeah.
Merge.
Say the J. Okay. Merge. Now it's connected to media out. Let me just add some text here. Oh, I already wrote. Now if I connect, and if by the way, there's also a feature for 3D text. I haven't fully learned it right now, but you can do this.
This level of a brain, if I had that level of a brain, I would learn something new every day.
For example, if I get this renderer 3D thing, and I connect this to media out, okay. Then I'll add a 3D text, and I connect this to renderer 3D. Now look, right now it doesn't look like any 3D text, but if I just go to extrusion, make it a bit more thick, are you seeing it's increasing a bit? Look, it looks like it's bulging out. Now if I rotate it, it's actually 3D now, and you can animate it. So for example, I can do this. Okay, then I can do this. Now all these white lines in between, they are the keyframe, meaning every time it moves. Okay, so now this is the final result. I mean, I think the software is named after him. Whatever you cook from is like swallow. Downtown is the last slide. Time is the last slide. If the world was ending, I'd wanna be next to you. If the party was over.
No, do you understand the lyrics? You have to from the lyrics from the song only, or you read the lyrics and
No, I already got a lot of the lyrics in my mind already.
from listening?
Yeah,
When suppose a song is playing, so you would understand the lyrics.
Yeah, I guess so.
मेरे को तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं समझ में आता ना, मैं तो नहीं, मेरे को तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं समझ में आते इंग्लिश के लिरिक्स। मैं हिंदी barely सीख पाता हूँ और याद कर समझ पाता हूँ। आप मुझे पता है, you knew all the lyrics.
Kind of, I'd say, but not forgotten.
No.
It's dead.
अच्छा, कोई गाना प्ले कर, कोई भी एक रैंडम सॉन्ग। अच्छा, एक मिनट, मैं ऐसा करता हूँ। Dangerous. They're bad.